Hello, my friends from Zen Rocks. Hello, everybody, and nice to see everyone. We're all connected through our spiritual practice and through our work in this world. And that's what brings us together today for this festive gathering, the gathering that's called Thrive. And we're looking at how we can come together to discuss and to come up with ideas, questions, but also answers concerning us as spiritual beings, spirituality, and us as people who act, activists in this world, and also how we're connected to this planet and how our work, our art, everything we do comes in place with what we need to do to sustain our planet, to sustain each other. And in that spirit of spirituality, activism, and sustainability, we come together with some dear friends. May I introduce here my friend Nina Rao, who's been to Greece before, with Krishna Das, chanting beautiful chants in the Hanuman Chalisa, and also working as an artist manager, as an organizer in this world. And we had a wonderful relationship, wonderful communication together for years. And may I also welcome Paz, an artist, beautiful artist, and also a practitioner at Plum Village at the Thich Nhat Hanh tradition, and her husband Jo, also a practitioner at Plum Village, Jo. But you just open up the world in a way that engages in conversation, the way that you bring very vital issues to our heart. That's what touches us, and that's why you're invited here to involve us in this discussion. I'm Vivi Letsou, co-creator of Plum Village, and also with our team, we're bringing Thrive to our whole community. Welcome, hello, and may we start our conversation about, you're both artists, Paz, Nina, do you consider yourself an artist?
Other people do.
Sure.
I guess I am.
Yeah, you're an artist and you sing the beautiful devotional music. And Paz, how would you describe yourself? Are you an artist?
It took me many years to be deserved to the title, but yes, now I'm standing behind it.
Yes, wonderful. And Jo, how should we introduce you?
Well, I suppose I'm a journalist. I create a podcast series with the abbot of Plum Village called The Way Out Is In. And I coach climate leaders and help them to stay centered and also sort of facilitate groups as well.
Wonderful. Yeah. So for today's conversation, you know that we're here to talk about what it feels like the world in a critical period right now, in critical times, and how what we do, our practice and our art, how we respond, or how it feels to us. Jo, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we know that the word that's come into the lexicon most strongly recently is the polycrisis. And that's the understanding that actually we're not facing one crisis like climate change, but we're facing many crises. We're facing loss of biodiversity, we're facing greater inequality, we're facing sort of a renewed threat of nuclear war. So actually we have many crises that we need to be looking at. And at this time, we need everyone to come out of their holes and to show up and in their own way to say, what difference can I make to this world and bring us back into balance? And so I think this particular conversation is very important because often we rely on sort of science and facts and analysis, but we also know that that just touches one part of us, which is our intellect, and that we need to touch our hearts in a much deeper way if we're going to transform this world and bring in a new system. And within that, art has a very powerful role to play because it actually reaches the parts that that mere facts and figures don't. And so I think the purpose of this conversation is really just to explore that about how art, what does it touch in us, and how can it play a role in transformation. And we know that in many epochs in history, art has played a critical role in showcasing, speaking the truth to power in new ways. So I think that's the purpose. So I mean, should we get underway?
So please, yes, Nina, let's hear from you to this question.
I appreciate that introduction so much. Everything that you've said, Jo, has like been on my mind for a while now. I just want to preface my contribution to this conversation by saying that for many years I worked taking people to the jungles of India to experience and photograph wildlife, not only in India, but also in Africa. So I've been very attached to the idea of preservation of wilderness areas around the world, actually. But I did create a nonprofit called savingwildtigers.org just because India is my motherland, and as it is for many people. At the time, the understanding was simply for the preservation of beauty with a capital B, that's been given to us. We've been graced by the presence of nature in our lives. And a lot of the time we take it for granted. So it started that way. And now, as the whole climate crisis has evolved, and also, Jo, as you mentioned, the greater inequalities, economic inequalities amongst human beings around the planet, we're seeing the interrelationship between that and the loss of biodiversity and complete encroachment on wilderness areas. So it's been interesting to follow that trajectory of conversation to understand more and more what that means. And my experience has been, especially in India and even in places in Africa, that the people who live around these wilderness areas that contain the biodiversity that we want to preserve are the ones who are not as rich, let's just say, in terms of finances. And they often are living at the poverty level. And yet they are the ones who are the stewards of this wilderness area. They're also the ones who, in many parts of the world, are living in places where the climate crisis is going to affect them the most in terms of change of temperature or sea levels rising and so on. And it's a big study to undergo to understand how all that works. But I think in terms of other than fundraising for preservation of wilderness areas to the best of my abilities, and I'm so happy to talk to the two of you, who you've been so involved in Plum Village and Thich Nhat Hanh. I'm so grateful for that and your practice. I recently read Zen and the Art of Saving the Planet. And, for the very same reason that we're talking today, which is to understand where do art and activism meet. And, I backhanded answer when Vivi asked me, do you consider yourself an artist? And the reason I said that is because my practice didn't start with any intention of being a singer or a musician, because I'm not a trained musician, but I fell into the practice of chanting as a young person. In my family heritage, my grandfather was an engineer for the British government, but he could sing and play music, and he sang devotional hymns from India. And that's where I first heard it. And then my life went on abroad. I didn't live in India for a long time. And I came to the US, and it was with falling into a yoga class where chanting was happening, and specifically hearing Krishna Das, that I got reconnected with that tradition of my heritage. And in exploring this tradition of chanting, in so many different ways, whether we're singing the names of God in call and response kirtan, or we're singing long devotional hymns, or even reading sacred texts. The sacred texts from India refer back to forests, refer back to the 5 elements, refer back to aligning with the 5 elements. And that you can find in Hinduism, you can find it in Tibetan Buddhism, you can hear it in all traditions actually, where in those days, in the days when these texts were brought to us, or these scriptures were brought to us, people were living much more in harmony with the environment, simply because they had to. That was the way in which it was pre-industry, it was an agrarian culture, and before that, it was people living off of the land in a very direct way. So the mantras that we chant are bringing us back to the elemental nature of our universe, the world in which we live. And I find that more and more so that as I chant, we are connecting those parts of our body, our subtle body, the area around us, and connecting not only with the people, but also the beings, the animals, the plants, and into the whole system in which we live. And now, because of social media and our ability to access information so quickly, we can also understand what type of environment people are living in on a daily, moment-to-moment basis around the world. So we can bring that into our sphere of practice and understanding of what's going on. And, it's clear that unless we do the practice that opens our heart and helps us cultivate compassion, whatever our practice might be, there's no way to really connect with the need for recognizing that our greed and our demand for what we need without looking at the consequences is what's going to basically destroy our home, our foundation.
Right. Nina, thank you. And Paz, this feels very aligned with sort of, in a sense, your practice, which is bringing everything you've learned from 25 years of being in different Buddhist traditions and the alignment to your art. So do you want to sort of build on what Nina just spoke of?
Yeah, and I want to say also something about, it wasn't really a question, but what you were saying earlier. So I feel that the power of art is that the fact that artists are in touch with the child inside them in a very direct way, and this child doesn't know any compromising. And this child is able to say the king is naked. That's the place we're coming from. And as artists, I feel lucky that we have that possibility to say the truth and get away with it. And the other thing that I feel that art can do is that we can elevate, if it is aligned with activism, we can elevate a painful message to a level of poetry and beauty and highlight it that way, that we present it to people in a way that is more digestible, more easy to connect. And so I find myself confronting with that title of also activism. It's like I never consider myself as an activist, but like you, Nina, it starts from young age. I know that at an age of 12, I said in my family, Jewish family of 3-generation butcher, I am vegetarian, and didn't want to go to the army. I went actually to India instead to study in an ashram. So I know that the seeds of activism is not necessarily just holding a banner. It's something that is inside of us. In my studio, I have a motto that is what I create from. The way I create from is that with those words is I don't know what I say, but I cannot not say it. And that energy of not being able not to say something is what motivates me. And maybe in that sense, I'm an activist, but I don't particularly call myself as an activist. I'm also just beginning to react on climate change through my works. but that is now the end result of many years of working through my art, trying to heal. So for me, the journey of art is a journey and is the same journey of spirituality, is a healing journey. And I see in my life, a lot of parallelity, how they work together and inform on each other. So another form for me of being an activist is maybe choosing to live from New York, coming here, living in Plum Village, supporting the community, which is all about sustainable living. So I feel that there's many ways to use the art to help in the world. And don't know what you...
Well, no, I think that's lovely. And I just want to build on that a bit, Nina, coming back to you and then Paz about, because Nina, you talked about almost a channel of love, you know, that the devotional music takes away the intellect, takes away anything extraneous and creates a channel. And that you said, without that channel of love, then we're not going to change the current system, because actually what got us into the mess within is striving and competition and intellect, whereas actually at the heart of what transformation is, that when we feel deep love for everything and everyone, we will change our mind and become shepherds of the future rather than destroyers of the future. So I'm just wondering about the role of how you as an artist are able to channel that and the importance of it.
Well, lucky for us, the channel of love is inherent in the mantra itself. So these are wisdom sound syllables that have been transmitted to us by seers, those who could see the interconnectedness of all beings. And they had the wisdom innate in themselves, and they were transmitted in these sound syllables. So they're there. The seed is already there in the mantra. Our job is to invoke them. Our job is to chant them. And through repetition, continue to water these seeds within ourselves. As we do that, the immediate and inevitable effect is a slow but sure opening to the hearts of other beings. And you know, we're covered in so much of our let's just say traumas, or just even challenges of our life in this life. And if you want to think, if you believe in such a thing, that we come into this life with our own set of samskaras, which is an Indian word that we use, which is a trajectory that, you know, our life, we've landed here, we have a path to lead in this life, and it's up to us to figure out how we're going to walk this path. And how are we going to walk this path in a good way so that we can even, first of all, achieve the things that we desire, which simply is, you know, having enough food to eat, shelter, a loving family, good health, you know, all the things that we need first to sustain our bodies. And then beyond that, how is it that we find a sense of peace and equanimity within ourselves? And what I've understood by being on this path, being in this community, and just living in this world, is that everybody, every one of us wants to feel connected. We don't want to feel separate. When we feel separate, we feel, you know, lost in a certain way. So what is it that we're connecting to? If we listen to the sages, if we listen to the sacred texts, it seems as if we're connecting with something outside of ourselves. But if we understand the simple instruction that our Guru Neem Karoli Baba said when he said, all one, sab ek, what does that mean? What does that mean? It means on a verbal level, it means that we're all the same. But do we understand that? Do we really? You know, we have so many boundaries. We have a separate identity. But these realized beings understand that we're really all the same. And until everyone feels well and feels good, we have the work of opening ourselves up with a heart of compassion to understand where everybody is in this universe. Give them. So Maharaji's motto was love, serve, and remember. Love everyone, serve everyone, and remember God. And when I listen to Thai's teachings, I don't hear anything different. It's the same. The practices are different, but it's the same teaching. So if we are all turned in that direction and we use whatever techniques and practices serve us and help us to open our hearts in this way, then we have some hope. We have to understand what are the challenges in other people so that we can even acknowledge that we have them inside of ourselves, or the other way. It goes both ways.
Thank you, Nina.
So,
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
So Paz, coming on to that same place, which is about how spirit and the teachings of Thai feed into your art, and how you're, because what Nina says is the expression that the artistry is the expression of the deep meaning, of the deep understanding of oneness. In terms of you as an artist, how does spirituality and the teachings of Thai show up through your work, and how do you express yourself?
So I'm just back from New York from exhibiting a large-scale installation I call Down to Earth, where I'll describe it in a minute. But what I realized also due to this interview, it really made me think, because there was other group of artists exhibiting next door, and they were very specifically doing work around the water element. And I know one of the artists, and she's completely, utterly, all her passion and all her endeavor is around water. And I had to think about it, because I'm not that artist. I'm not, or that person. I'm not focusing on one thing. I don't have, for example, a team around the animals or the water or anything that it is specific. I feel that in the way that I'm configured, what is important for me is to look into the essence of how we came to the place where we are now. And I feel that the teaching of the Buddha is so relevant to these days. This particular teaching around I always pronounce it wrong, the noble
path.
Yes. So for me, the right view is the most important from all of the 8. And it is to do with the fact that if we would have the right view, then the right view, according to Buddhism, is to know that we are not separated from the earth, and that we are made out of non-us elements, and which is almost on a level of a child. Everybody knows that we made out of the sun and out of the air and out of the food, and we still don't live according to that. We live with the egoic mind that we are the center of the world, instead of putting ourselves out and putting the earth and life in the center. And if we would know that, I often ask myself the question in my works also, if we would know that and embody that, how different the world would look like. And my feeling is that I want to heal in my works, or through my works, that wrong view of separation. And in particular, that installation, it was an interactive one, which I hardly work like that. Only the crisis of climate change caused my art to change into big installations. So in my studio, I actually work rather small or medium size. And when I have the opportunity I got that as a commission to go big, I just go really big, because the climate issue is so big, and I feel like I want more and more people to interact with it. And so I made this very simple concept of earth. Just brought 60 bags of pure, beautiful black earth to the space, the so-called gallery space, and I made in the earth large figures that 4 people can come in, so they're in a shape of a cross, and 4 people can come in and lay inside them. So they're like a representation of empty mummies, where the idea is that we can feel small compared to the planet, and we can also contemplate on coming and going from the earth. And the only thing that people had to do is to cover themselves before they go into the figures with a blanket of burlap with herbs inside, engraved herbs inside them, to show that even if we are mourning, like putting a sack on ourselves, like in the Bible time, mourning and contemplating on what we've done, we have also the herbs as a chance of transformation. And the installation is a sound installation. There was a 8-minute loop of sound of the wind. So it became actually an homage to the air element and what we're doing to the air. And the wind, just to say briefly, the wind is a collage. I worked with Soundscaper, and we collage the air that way, that from like a hurricane one, very vivid, like the mind, kind of echoing the mind, goes to a journey of meditation, to a sound which is more of a desert, like more open, and then a sound of a wind in shimmery leaves, and then a sound of my own breath, to show that there is no division between the air that we breathe, or air, wind, and our breath. And I asked the people, just in simple instruction, to lay like this in a Shavasana mode and listen to the winds and connect to their breath. And I honestly did not imagine what would be the impact. In my studio, I couldn't do it. I couldn't bring that amount of, it was 5-meter surface of earth. It was quite big. So I only saw it in New York when I arrived, when I ordered everything there. And I was really, really surprised to see the impact on people in terms of providing them a moment that they can lay down on the raw earth and connect to something very elemental as the breath outside and inside. And the reaction were very profound. And also very interestingly, the installation, its simplicity also was challenging people, because even when people were invited to lay down, some of them felt that it is maybe dirty. The earth is too dirty for their white t-shirt or for their hair, and they didn't want to lay down, which was, I see it also as an impact. So I also want to say that when we do something like this, we have to release and let go. We don't know what will be the impact. We just know that there are ripples, but we don't know, what will be, how deep it can go.
And Pazzi, just before I come back to Nina, can you talk a bit about how, because Nina was talking about a channel, but what she does is, in a sense, opening a channel of love. So can you just talk a bit, Paz, about how you channel this work? Because you don't sit there and intellectually study, but you have a chance methodology. So even the idea for that installation just came up. So can you talk a bit about how you work?
To be honest, I wish I know how I work. It is very interesting. I think if I would know exactly how I work, I wouldn't be an artist. That's my feeling. But it is, I have to say something before. I used to be an artist that working in clay and stone, and I had to know what I'm doing. I had to prepare it, and every wrong hit on the stone will break the stone. And one day it's changed completely, because I realized that it doesn't match with my question inside and with my need to be spontaneous. And I started to collect rubbish from the sea where we lived in Brighton, and realizing that I want to give homeless object a place in the world, and it's also tapping into my Jewish ancestors and so on. And it was a complete revelation, and I changed my whole way of working. And I'm basically in the studio, I'm facing every day, whenever I'm there, I'm facing a white canvas. I have no idea what I'm going to do. I wrote a dissertation about being intimate with the void. It's most important for me is to not to know, actually, and to be in touch with, in a way, it is very, how to say, it's resembled the Zen, like I just don't know. I just don't want to know, and I work in the moment while responding to things as they emerge.
Great, thank you. And just before I pass back to Vivi, Nina, I just wanted to ask you one very quick question around how, so the devotional music, it opens up a space, but do you feel the need to link that space to action in the world? Because you can have people sitting, opening up a lovely space, and then just sort of leaving and going back to their normal life. but also you have another party which is saying actually very intentional, which is we need to save these biodiversity ecosystems and the communities that safeguard them. How do those two things merge in your mind or in your practice?
Well, in my mind, I can speak for myself and say that they're completely intertwined, mostly because I think I've been very open to nature and natural experiences from a long time ago, even before I started any, so to speak, spiritual practice. But I loved hearing what Paz is saying about her process, you know, the not knowing, but she's able to express it through her art, which, by the way, sounds so very beautiful. And I'm sorry I missed it in New York. I think that I try to not really say to people that you should do practice in order to be an activist, or you should be an activist and do and use your practice to further your activism. I think that one will naturally lead to the other, depending on which side you're coming from. But for me, a lot of what I do fundraisers for the forest all the time. And when we chant and we create devotional music, I also try to introduce an educational element in that, so people can understand just very simple things about, you know, consuming, thinking about what we're consuming, thinking about how we're polluting, thinking about saving wilderness areas, because, you know, this has been given to us as a gift of nature. Once it's gone, we can't get it back. While we think we can do anything, that's one thing that we can't do.
Right, thank you, Nina. Vivi, is there anything you want to ask or add?
Yes, I would like to say that we really appreciate hearing from all of you, and Paz, you know, what I get is that you feel the reality of interconnectedness and the pain of interconnectedness, and then somehow you express it through your art, and it's a very subtle way of doing that, but that is in a way your action and your activism, and hopefully that makes a ripple in the world, right? And then for you, Nina, as well, you actually, even though you say that you don't want to tell people who come to your concerts be activists, or you don't want to tell people who are there to take care of the jungle, you don't want to tell them be spiritual, but somehow what you do is, what you both do is very interconnected. Like there's almost no separation between your practice, your spirituality, your interconnectedness, your reverence for life, and then how you express that through your voice and through your work to save forest, and through your work of expressing past trauma and what happens, right? So in a way, I sense it as something that is very intertwined. I wonder, because for me, you know, the anxiety is like, it's always, is it enough, and is it direct enough? You know, because they're talking about not having enough water, like 50% of the planet will not have enough drinking water in a few years. And that the way that we go, the way that the earth is not being taken care of by humans right now, some people say it's going to be 20 years, you know, before it becomes insufferable. The pandemic also showed us how crucial times are. So for me, there's always that anxiety, like, is that direct enough? And is it strong enough? And is it effective enough? And I would like to ask this of both of you, and like, if you can tell me just your personal opinion in just a little time, the little time that we have left. And also, my second question is, we are thinking about young people, and the question has been raised that what's critical is how we're going to engage young people, how we're going to get them interested, you know, and what do you think about that? Is like, how can we embrace, support, and inspire young people? So these are my two questions. Like, if we feel that what we do is direct enough and effective enough, and the second is the young people. So take it away.
Paz, do you want to go first?
Okay, I would. So it's interesting question, you know, about impact. And I know that when we throw a stone to the river, we can't have the eyes, and the inner eyes, to know how far that stone is going. But what we do know for sure is that there are ripples. And I feel that where we are, because we live only in that moment, and that may be also the problem of why people cannot connect to the idea that ice is melting and will affect us, or already affecting us, but we live in the moment. So in the moment, right now, I'm sitting here, everything is perfect. So I don't feel it. So all I can do is, as an artist, I think, is to help people to feel, and there is no guarantee that they would. And I don't know how, how radical one can be, and maybe subtle ways can work sometimes more direct than non-subtle, like maybe being very much in the face of people can push them away. I have no idea how it works. It's magical. It's then you enter the unseen world. It's magic. I don't know. But I know that for me, living in this moment, all I can do is try to make people join me to feel and to heal this wrong perception of separation.
Thank you. Nina, what's your thoughts?
Beautiful, Paz. So one thing I just want to bring up is the two questions addressing that Vivi asked. Being an activist involves being a model, because the more, if you can embody what it is that you're talking about, people can see better what it is you're talking about. Otherwise, you're just talking at them. That's the first thing. The second thing I think we should acknowledge is that there is a large percentage of people who are experiencing what they're calling climate grief and are completely immobilized and not really sure what to do. So I think it's important to share with people what are the small steps that we can even do in our home front. Never mind trying to change the world. What do we do at home? What do we do in our own lives that are going to help? Do you want to plant a native garden instead of a lawn in your front yard? Do you want to use compostable plastic? Find the small things that you can do. Do you want to maybe consider don't eat meat? There's lots of different ways to look at this, but there's a lot that you can do inside of yourself and in your home, just in your home area. From that, the children will feel inspired, because my experience has been, unless you're Greta Thunberg, many children are feeling completely like, wait, why is this my responsibility? You guys lived your life and did everything and got everything you wanted. Why do I suddenly have to be the ones bearing the responsibility? So it's important to remember that while trying to inspire them at the same time.
Thank you, Nina. And Vivi, if I can just make a couple of short comments, because in relation to what difference we make, I once interviewed Thich Nhat Hanh, and I asked him, I said, there's so many problems in the world. How can we make an impact? And he said, the most important thing is to do what you can do best, and then trust that other people will do what they need to do. And I said, well, what do you do at best? And he said, well, I have learned to sit and to walk. And at that time I thought, well, yeah, that's not a very good answer. And then afterwards, speaking to what Nina said, it was a very profound answer, because actually everything he's built in his life was as a result of his quality of his sitting, the embodiment of his sitting and the embodiment of his walking meditation. And from that, everything came. And so that, I think, speaks to what Nina and Paz are saying about, we focus on what we can do, we embody it, we become present, and that is the change, because we are the change, and that will be most likely to support other people. And with young people, I'm on the board of advisors of a youth charity called Force of Nature, which is there to support people going through, young people facing climate anxiety. And I think there's two things. One is about helping young people to be in balance and to help them to work with and through their despair so that they become active in the world, and then to train them in how to act, because there are lots of things in terms of intergenerational support that the young people have incredible passion and insight, and older people have incredible passion and insight in a different way. And the commingling of that and the support each offers, the youthful exuberance and also maybe the wise elderly knowing, come together. And if young people are just left on their own, then actually it's a tough place. But if you bring these skills and passions together, then actually you've got something that has the power for transformation. But back to you, Vivi, because I think we need to close.
Well, yeah, and thank you, because what you all said really touched a chord in me, right, Jo, that Thich Nhat Hanh, or Thai, is like to call him, he played a role in a big inspirational role in my life as well. And like you said, what I got from his activism of just sitting and walking is that when we do that, when we sit wholeheartedly, when we walk wholeheartedly, when we sing wholeheartedly, and when, okay, our act is just like Nina said, to recycle or to not use certain things, and we do it with love, and the love does come because we do it wholeheartedly, then somehow this creates a sense of okayness for us. And then maybe young people feel that, okay, it's not all lost, because, you know, I think the young people feel a great burden on their shoulders anyway. And so we would like to approach young people, like you say, through your, you have one organization that you support, but somehow to be there with young people, to work with them, to engage them, to inspire them, and for us to be inspired by them, for us to learn from them, because I think they have incredible force to actually enact positive change. So I think that our wholehearted practice and everything you talked about, wholehearted practice and wholehearted expression through the art of singing, of creating art pieces, of living our life, of sitting, of walking, maybe that is one way to open up to the next step, to open up to getting somehow closer to young people as well, and to tell them we're supporting you in this. We're passing on the baton to you, because soon we will. And the world is not like a very easy gift right now, and we're passing this difficult gift to you, but we are supporting you with our wholeheartedness to be your selves.
Wonderful. So thank you, Nina. Thank you, Paz. Thank you, Vivi. And we hope that you have gained even a small insight from listening to this wonderful, rich, exuberant and loving conversation. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.